Welcome to another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers in law aren't necessarily monsters in law. And I'm joined by my I don't know what that was. And I'm joined by my lovely co hosts who happen to be my daughters in law. And I have Kelly to the left of me.
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm married to Beth's oldest son, Alex.
And Chelsea's to my right.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I'm married to Beth's middle son, Andrew.
And we have a very important topic. I mean, I think it's important because I'm single. And so we're talking about solo travel. And I just came back from a Mediterranean cruise that I went on all by myself. So we're going to talk about that and also some tips and tricks on traveling solo. Because one thing I really noticed on the cruise was the solo women travelers outnumbered the men, probably, I think it was 90% to 10%.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes.
Kinda
So
shocking.
I know it was very revealing. But before we get into today's episode, let's raise our glasses in a toast because we know you don't have to be a blood relative to love your relative. So cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Cheers.
There we go.
Cheers.
It always goes dangerously over my computer. I'm just waiting for that that time where we miss.
Tried not to overfill your cup today.
Okay, there we go. All right. So my message for mom today really is just very brief. But I do think that solo travel is very important. And we'll go over some of the pros and cons of that. And I just look back at my mother,
Mm-hmm.
who was a widow at 53, so quite young. I was 60, so that's relatively young. But I just go back and look at how she started to retreat a little bit in life and stop taking chances and stop living a vibrant life. And it was slowly but surely she was doing that. And she had been so active and so, I mean, she loved to travel, and she and my dad were always taking a trip. And I know that that was one thing that she loved. But I mean, I will say, so she and her two sisters would take my Nana on trips.
Mm-hmm.
And this was early on. So this is probably when she was like 53 to 60. So she was venturing out with her sisters and her Nana. So I was really happy about that. And they went on some very fun trips. And they had organized solo, or not solo, but they had organized travel trips that, for tours.
Yeah.
But it really stuck out in my mind when I became a widow and just looking back at her life and not wanting to repeat some of the things that I saw happen to her. So solo travel has been big in my mind since I've become a widow, that I needed to do that and that it was important. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. You can ask me any questions if you want, but we will kick it off because I did just come back from my Mediterranean cruise, and I did do it all by myself. And that was my first big trip solo. Although I've taken little junkets here and there, I mean, very safe. I usually go to like the Ritz Carlton, Coney, for a few days, or I ventured off to, it was Amelia Island, the Ritz Carlton there.
Yeah.
So I pick very safe environments because one thing that I'm also very cognizant of is, as a female, and I'm 66, I want to be safe. I mean, safety really is first. And so tell me if I'm wrong, but I think all of you felt very confident that since I was on a cruise, that was a very safe mode of travel.
Well, actually, so I was thinking about this on the way over here. And while I've never done solo travel, I did just recently go solo to, like, I flew solo to New Orleans to meet a group of girlfriends, and we met up there at the airport. But I thought about you when I was at the airport because when I was, going through security and like going, to my gate, I'm like, oh my gosh, Beth did this all the way to Europe.
That's
And
right.
I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I could, but
It's a lot. You could.
I thought about it and I was like, I think I'm more of a passenger or princess when it comes to travel. And I just walk, and follow Andrew, and I'm like, do, and he knows where our gate is and everything. And then when I went by myself, I like almost got on the train because initially my gate was at the A concourse.
Right.
And then I refreshed it as I was about to get on the train, and it was at T, and I was already at T. So I'm like, all right, let me go up.
Right.
You know.
Right. I know you have to be much more cognizant of everything
Yeah.
when you travel solo. And that is not only you're doing everything for yourself, like you're hauling your luggage, you're making sure that you're at the right gate all by yourself, because
Mhm.
I always had Mac to lean on. I
Yeah.
mean, we traveled extensively for years, but he was, and not to say that I didn't take trips by myself because I used to
Yeah.
take the boys to school, university, and things like that. But as a family, there was Mac, or as a couple, there was Mac, and he was always
Mhm.
in charge. And I mean, and he was so organized and so on time, and he had
Yeah.
everything just boom, boom, boom.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Well,
yes.
Andrew, like, he's like, "Do you have your passport? Do you have your passport?"
Mhm.
He got mad at me, when we recently went out of the country to Amsterdam
Mhm.
because I took my passport out of his bag and I put
Mhm.
it in my bag. He goes, "Why is your passport not my bag?" I'm like, "'Cause it's my passport." I'm like, "It's in my bag." And then
Yeah.
he proceeded to ask me 50 times
I
Do you
know.
have
about
your
my
passport?
passport.
I
Yeah.
know. Well, I
Like,
will.
"Do you wanna hold
Yeah.
it?"
Well, I will tell you, when we traveled as a family, Mac would be in charge of all of our
Yeah.
passports. So
Mhm.
he knew.
Yeah.
So because he was like very organized. And we also had one family member who shall remain nameless that was very, I mean, was always losing things.
Yeah.
Always. A wallet, a this, a that, the other thing. So yes. So
Yeah.
Mac would just take things into his
Yeah.
own hands. And so he would make sure. So Andrew probably gets that honestly from his dad.
Yeah.
But yes, so that's a downside of solo travel, is you are responsible for
Mhm.
every little detail.
Yeah, you have to be more on your A game.
You do.
Yeah.
You can't
A lot
really
of
just
double and triple
yeah.
checking to
Mhm.
make sure.
Mhm.
I think that sometimes I wish I long for the days when travel was so much easier and you just had your paper ticket,
I know.
because now with it on your phone, I'm like constantly looking at my wallet to make sure, like the wallet on my phone to make sure that my boarding pass is in the
Right.
right spot and, everything is fine.
Right.
But I'm
You
always,
can still get a printed ticket.
you can, but I rarely check a bag. So
Right.
I never go to the
I always
Yeah.
check-in.
I
Yeah.
always check my bag. So that's one
Yeah.
one thing. And we will go through some tips and tricks that I personally use and utilize when I travel solo. But let me just go back to my cruise. So this was the big trip for me that I went on all by myself. So I started off in Rome, and I actually booked an extra day in Rome so I could do a little bit of sightseeing. And I did that all by myself the first day. So I checked into my hotel, and so actually one of the first tips that I will share with everyone to make my life very easy and very safe, I always book cars. So
Hmm.
I always do everything beforehand. I
Hmm.
don't leave anything to the last minute.
Yeah.
So when I knew this trip was coming up, and I go with Viator, which is a worldwide travel agency. And actually, Kelly, when
Hmm.
we were in Paris, that's who
Hmm.
I booked our tours through,
Oh,
was
yeah.
Viator.
Okay.
And
Good to
then
know.
and we
I'll
had a
have to remember
car,
that.
pick us up and
Hmm.
all that. So you can book absolutely anything and everything with Viator. And so I booked my cars, and I did go on one tour. So I went to tour the Vatican
Mhm.
on the day that I headed off to
And you
go to the
booked that through
cruise.
them as well?
Hmm.
So you can book transportation
Hmm.
and sightseeing tours through
Hmm.
them. That's a
Absolutely
great.
everything.
So we should link for people watching this on YouTube. We should link them up
Yes,
in the
Yeah.
I will.
No, that is great because I feel like the
It's makes it so easy.
the car, from the airport to wherever you're going, especially if you're going out of the country, I feel like that's always the most nerve-wracking part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then when
Yes.
you get there, you just don't know, you
Exactly.
know
Yeah, if you're going to a
Exactly.
place you've never been before, whether it's here or abroad, like
Yeah.
it can be very scary to like get a taxi and hope that they're taking you to the right
Yes.
place,
Well,
especially if you don't
honestly,
speak the language.
even
Challenging.
I mean, even going to New Orleans,
Mhm.
getting an Uber,
Mhm.
the Uber that we took from the airport to the hotel, I mean, it was totally fine.
Mhm.
But then there were a few Ubers that we got in, and I'm like, one of them didn't even have seatbelts that worked.
Oh
Right.
I'm
gosh.
like, how is this
Right.
safe?
I
Yeah.
know.
We're
And
going on the interstate right now, and my seatbelt doesn't work.
Well,
mhm.
one of the things that I actually really like about taking taxis, if you don't get a car,
Mhm.
taking a taxi rather than an Uber from the airport to
Yeah.
your hotel is always better. And we actually
I
learned
agree.
this when
I
we
like
went to
that.
New Orleans that
Mhm.
if we had not gotten in that taxi, we would have been stuck in Mardi Gras parade traffic
Mhm.
because this taxi driver knew all the back roads. It's
Mhm.
like he
Mhm.
knew,
The back of
Which is,
how
yeah,
to get there,
city
which
the
was
back,
great.
yes, by the
Yeah.
back of his hand. So I recommend, I do like to go in Ubers, but so
yeah,
I will back up. So years ago, and Mac was still alive, and I had this uh, junket at home or wasn't QVC, it was HSN,
Hmm.
which was down in Tampa, Florida. So they had I was like their ambassador for this I can't even remember now. It was they don't even have it anymore. But anyway, it was like
Yeah,
lemon drop or lemon way or I can't even
right.
remember. I'd have to go
It
look
was
it up.
lemon something. I
It was
remember.
lemon something, but anyway, so I was traveling back and forth frequently.
Mhm.
And that was when Mac did have cancer. And so he's like, you can't do this in an Uber. You can't go in an Uber and I don't want you driving by yourself,
Hmm.
to the airport and I can't take you anymore. So we've got to figure this out. So that's when I started hiring cars and I have this great service in town, Bulldog Limousine that I mean, they know me so well.
Hmm.
So for sure I always
Mhm.
hire a driver because I live 90 minutes away from the airport. So that is always a big
Mhm.
extension on any of my trips. So I will share that. So and then I have cars meet me wherever I go. So even if that's stateside or it's overseas, I have a car meeting me. And it's so comforting because they text you, they let you know that they're there,
Hmm.
they have a sign up and so you just have to look for the sign and then you connect with them and then they take your luggage. They help with
I was gonna say
everything.
it's nice when
Mhm.
they to have someone there to help
Mhm.
with the luggage
It
too.
really is. And also, as you were saying, that's one of the most nerve-wracking things that
Mhm.
I experience is especially when I'm traveling overseas is the airport. And I don't
Hmm.
want to
Yeah,
navigate.
the airport
I don't want to just, I mean, in the old days, I would have no problem, winging it and all of that, but I
it's
do
like
not want to do that.
well, even when I went to the Atlanta airport this past weekend to go to New Orleans,
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, I'll just drive down there," because it's actually cheaper for me to drive and park for the weekend than it
Hmm.
is for me to take an Uber. I
Right,
think it cost me $48, where an Uber that would have cost at least 80 probably,
right.
to get there and back. And when I got there, they didn't have any parking at the international terminal. They didn't
Hmm.
have any parking at domestic. And so I ended up veering my way to ATL West parking, which I had never done before, and I didn't
Mhm.
even know where that was, but I was already running late, and
Right.
so then I'm stressed out because
You
I'm like,
are.
I don't know where to go,
Yeah.
but
You
it
are.
becomes so complicated, and then
Yes.
they're always doing construction,
Yes.
there's a million signs, it's like arrivals,
Right.
departures, then you turn the wrong way, and then you're,
Mhm.
like, stuck in a lane.
Yeah.
Mhm. I
Well,
know.
It just
Yes.
Atlanta
gets
And
a
airport's
that
mess.
terrible.
and that adds more stress.
Yeah,
Hmm.
On top of just, the stress that you're
exactly.
feeling when
Yeah.
you're traveling and going through security and all of that.
Yeah,
So yeah, so
Yeah.
my number one tip would be to hire a driver
Hmm.
and they
yeah.
drop you right off. So I always go to in Atlanta, I go to where the sky caps are. So then I just
Mm.
check because I always check my bags. So I just check my bag. They'll print my ticket, so I have a printed ticket, and it's
Hmm.
on my phone too. So I have double backup.
Yeah.
And it's then I just breeze through
Yeah.
security. But
Yeah.
having those little things in place, and I know it's an extra expense with your travel, but for me, it's worth it.
The peace of
It's
mind
Oh,
is
the
yeah.
really
peace of
sweet.
mind
Yeah.
and the safety that I feel. It's just so
Well,
worth
when I
it.
got to there, at that point in time, I was like, I should have Ubered
Mhm.
because then it was too late for me to turn around.
Yeah.
So
Right,
then I was like, I have to find
right.
parking. Otherwise, I'm going to miss my flight,
That's right.
Very
you know?
stressful.
It is. Yes.
So when you so the we should say that the cruise that you went on was with
With
Windstar,
Windstar.
right?
And I'd partnered with them before. So, and actually, I'd gone on a cruise with AJ
Mm-hmm.
last December, and so we had a Mediterranean cruise, and we had a ball. I have to say, it really is a lot more fun traveling with someone
Yeah.
than traveling solo.
Yeah.
Although I think it's important to be able to travel solo too, but we can get into that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I hijacked your question.
Well, no,
So
I was just going to ask overall, like we can start with what were the things, I suppose I'm curious, what were the things that you liked best about going on a cruise solo? Because I know that cruises, because we've been on a cruise and there have been kind of tough moments where you're at sea and there, if it's a small boat, there's not a lot of entertainment or things to do during the
right,
day.
that's
So if
right.
you're alone, especially, that can be
Mhm.
challenging because you've got to entertain yourself. So whether
Exactly.
you're,
Mhm.
reading a book or whatever, but I'm curious as to whether or not you made friends with anybody and like maybe sat in on a card game or had lunch with someone or,
Mhm.
did things like that that you maybe wouldn't have done had you been traveling with somebody.
Right.
So,
Or paired
Yes,
you up at dinner with someone? Did
that's
they?
right. So I will happily share that. So
Mhm.
I actually made a lot of friends on the cruise,
yeah.
and I had a very dear friend of mine. She's a blogger, Deb from Fabulous Over 40. So go check out her website.
Mhm.
But and we're very dear friends, and she was single until she was about 35-ish. So she had a lot of solo travel as a
Mhm.
younger woman. And she was so happy that I decided to go on a solo trip with a cruise because she was like, you are going to meet so many people. It's
Mhm.
like such a great way. A, it's safe.
Mhm.
So what I like about cruises is that it is a safe
Yeah.
mode of transportation. You can see multiple cities in such an easy way
Yeah.
because you just once you're on board, you unpack and you don't have to unpack again. And I like that
Mhm.
about a cruise. So that's one thing that I do like about cruises. And the second thing is I met a lot of people and it was
Mhm.
really fun. And
Yeah.
everybody was very open and interested in meeting new people. So the first night, well, actually, so I will just share. So I was just on the boat. So you have your safety drill first thing. I mean,
Mhm.
when everybody's on board, then you have to go to the
Yeah.
muster station. You have to have your safety drill. So as I
Mhm.
was making my way to the safety drill, I had one of my blog
Mhm.
readers greet me, and she's like, "Beth, I was really hoping that you were going to be on this cruise because I'd been talking about it."
Yeah.
So I met Nancy, and she was absolutely lovely, and her husband Mike,
Aw.
and they were just so darling, and we kept running into each other throughout the cruise,
Mhm.
and I had dinner with them one night, so they invited
Oh,
me to
fun.
dinner. So that was dinner one night was with Nancy and Mike.
Mhm.
The very first night, I did eat all by myself, and there was a table next to me with a couple, and so they struck up a conversation with me. So
Mhm.
really, I was just chatting with someone the entire meal, even though I was eating solo.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So and they were a couple, and they lived in Menlo Park,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
so AJ's
Yeah, that
very
connection
familiar
to Menlo
with
Park, yeah.
Menlo Parks. He went to grad school at Stanford, and my late husband, Mr. Sile Mack, he actually that's how he came to America was he went to school at Menlo College.
Mm.
So anyway, so
Yeah.
they were very sweet, and I kept running into them throughout the cruise too. So we would always have these conversations and chat. So then the first tour that I went on, so I'm standing in line. And of course, I'm like one of the last people because I always
Mhm.
cut everything very, I'm never the first one that arrives to anything. And
I need to know what your moon and
uh
rising sign is because she's a Virgo and it just doesn't make any
I
sense
know
to
it doesn't
me.
make any sense. I know. Well, there are certain things that I'm really very on time with, like travel.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I really do have that instilled in me. So, I do add a lot of time into those things. But honestly, it's really been since I've been
Yeah,
working and running the house all by myself that I really
got
cut
you.
things. I have a very short window. So,
Anyways, you
yes.
were waiting in line.
Anyway, so I'm like one of the last people in line, but there's actually one person behind me. And so he was a lovely gentleman and he was a widower. So we struck up a conversation. And then then we were talking I had already been talking to the woman ahead of me in line, and she was traveling single.
Oh,
So,
nice.
and she was from Houston, Texas, Sugarland. So, and I had lived there. So knew
Mhm.
exactly where that was. So we
Yeah.
struck up a conversation. So then the man behind me, we struck up a conversation, and then then he sat by me. It was a boat tour to Positano, so he
Mhm.
sat by me on the boat, and then we were like wandering the streets of Positano, and then he invited me to lunch.
Mhm.
So I had that. I mean, no romance. So if anybody's wondering, there was no onboard romance or anything like that. He was so sweet and kind and very successful. I mean,
Mhm.
the man owned 3 homes and, had his own business, and he was actually traveling with his business partner.
Mm.
So he wasn't traveling solo, and then 2 of his friends or actually it was a friend of his from high school and then his wife, and I actually met them. So I did keep running into him throughout the cruise, and he kept inviting me, so I had dinner with the whole group friend one night, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
had drinks. So there was that. And then the second night that we were there, so the cruise director invited 6 solo female travelers to dinner.
Oh,
So
that's
then
Mm.
nice.
I
Yeah.
met 5 other solo
Oh, nice.
travelers,
Yeah.
which is very nice, and I thought that was brilliant. We all thought that was brilliant of Windstar to do that
Mhm.
Yeah.
because it was just so nice to see other female travelers, and then we actually got into I actually asked them, during dinner, what was the main attraction of traveling solo, and then, what are some of the hindrances of traveling solo. So nobody so I thought this was interesting. Nobody came up with the positive of traveling.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh, they came up with the negative.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
really?
Uh-huh,
interesting.
I know, which was
Hmm.
but the big negative was when you don't check your bag, and then you have your bag with you at the airport, and, like, if you have to use the restroom, I mean, you have to
Mhm.
take
Yeah.
that bag wherever
Wherever
you
you go.
go.
Yeah.
So that's also
Mm.
why I check my bags, 'cause I like to be hands-free when I travel. I don't
Mhm.
wanna
Yeah.
be I don't wanna be
Well, the good
lugging
thing
that
now is I don't know
luggage
if you
around.
guys have noticed this, but I feel like all the bathrooms now at the airport are just massive when you
Mhm.
walk inside the stalls. So there is plenty of
Yes,
room for all of
There
the
is.
bags, which
Yeah.
is
there
nice.
is.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it is
That's
kind of a
true.
pain in the
Yeah,
butt, especially then when you're having to like lift it over into the overhead bin and
right.
then
Yeah.
you got to get it out
Right? I mean,
and not hit someone in the head.
Yeah.
that's right. I mean, that's also, something that I think about at
Mhm.
66, and I work out and I do weights. I'm very fit, but
Yeah.
I also don't want to deal with all the madness
Yeah.
of the checked bags because they're like, wah, wah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
The
They just
unchecked
think about
bags.
Oh
themselves.
my gosh. They're just like,
Oh,
elbowing
they're
you because everything is about finding that overhead bin. And I'm
well,
like, knock yourself out.
when
I
me and
don't want
Andrew
any part of that.
went to so our flight was delayed when we went to Amsterdam from New York. We basically flew from Atlanta to New York, and then we were delayed,
Hmm.
and we ended up missing our flight in Amsterdam. But they made an announcement, and they said we have. It wasn't just me and Andrew, but there was 5 passengers. They said we have 5 passengers that are connecting to Amsterdam and to London. Please allow them to get off the plane first,
Yeah.
as so that they can
Right.
make their connecting flight.
Hmm.
Every single person, when they
Hmm.
opened the gate, stood up, and I was like,
Yeah.
Yep. I know. I know.
so, yeah, I mean, no one
Uh-huh.
it's like everyone's just out
Free
for
for
It
all.
themselves.
is. It
Yeah.
really is. It's yes, every man for himself, and it's
Yeah,
all about overhead
which
bin.
I think is why it makes people, and especially women,
Mhm.
nervous to do solo traveling because it really is kind of every man for themselves
Yes.
sometimes, and it's
Uh-huh.
like no one you
Uh-huh.
could be, like, in the middle of the,
Yeah.
walkway
Mhm.
struggling, and it's just everyone's just, like, walking around you.
I know. I
I
know.
I feel like
Etiquette goes out the window, it really
it
It
does.
does.
really
Yeah. And
does.
I
Mhm.
actually don't feel shocked at all anymore when I hear stories about passengers on planes getting in fights.
Yeah,
Like that is not surprise. Like
I know.
it is really people are really hard to travel around, and if
Mhm.
especially if you're going solo, you do really have to kind of advocate for yourself and like
Mhm.
not get
Yeah.
knocked around.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Which there again, I will advocate checking your bags
yeah,
because it really does. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
perhaps that wouldn't make your life easier or less stressful. You might be more stressed wondering if your bag is going to be.
Well, you were going for a long time too,
Mm.
so that would have been nearly impossible to get all
mhm,
of that stuff in a
Oh yeah,
carry-on.
yeah,
I know.
If
And
it's
this,
a weekend trip, that's maybe a little bit different,
I
but
know.
a
yeah,
2-week long
yeah,
journey,
Yes, there's
definitely check the
yeah,
bags.
yeah,
definitely, definitely. But
absolutely.
I do whether it's small or big.
Mhm.
Because it for me, it just makes
It
my
makes
life
it
easier.
yeah.
And then I'm not stressed. And then I'm just like do 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 in the airport, and
Yeah,
I'm not worried about anything.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Um, but yes, so the cruise, I met a lot of people, and there was honestly, it was just that first night that I ate by myself, which I really didn't even end up eating solo
Oh,
because
yeah.
I
Yeah.
was chatting with the table next to me. So,
So were there any parts of like being off the boat and going solo that you particularly enjoyed or particularly didn't enjoy?
well, the one thing that I also like about cruises is that you have the opportunity to book a tour
Excursions,
if
yeah.
you want to.
Mhm.
Or you can choose to travel or not travel, but you can tour the city all by yourself. So you have
Yeah.
choices. So I picked ahead of time which tours that I wanted to go on and then the cities that I just wanted to explore by myself. And Dubrovnik was one of the ones that I decided to explore myself. Say I wasn't really interested in any of their excursions. So, but it was really so easy. When it was
Mhm.
a very safe city. I mean, the boat ferries you because we were docked outside of the outside of Dubrovnik. So they had these like
Mhm.
little, ferries that would, or I think they had a special name for their vessels, but anyway, so they would shuttle you back and forth, and then so you knew that like every 15 minutes you could get
Mhm.
a pickup, to go back to
Yeah.
the boat, and then you knew what time
What
and
time?
was the last call,
Right.
when the last ship would go or the last little ferry would go back to the boat. So you had to be cognizant of that. But Dubrovnik was just a beautiful, easy little
Mhm.
city to tour, and one of the things that really struck me about that city was how touristy it had had become.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I hadn't seen it in years gone by, but I actually had a few readers also tell me that during the summertime, it's probably the most visited city. So it's just like so overcrowded. And
Busy.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fairly crowded when I was there, but I was
Mhm.
really very cognizant of how touristy it truly was. And Game of
Mhm.
Thrones really put Dubrovnik on the map years ago because it did.
For tourism, yeah.
Mhm. A
Mhm.
lot of filming there, and they actually did have a Game of Thrones tour. I just didn't go
Oh,
on it.
really? That's cool.
Yeah, they did have it, but it's a really lovely city, and I explored it all by myself, and then actually, so then I did, run into that widower, so I did have drinks with he and his friends. They're finishing up lunch, but,
Mhm.
I just had a drink with them, and then I had spied this beautiful little hotel cafe. So
Mhm.
you could have drinks and then look at the city, or you could have lunch and then look out the water. So,
Mhm.
so I had lunch there
Oh,
all by
nice.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
really fun,
Yeah.
but I felt very safe, and
Mhm.
so.
I think traveling I think people, depending on what types of things you want to do in a particular place,
Hmm.
will kind of determine whether or not it's enjoyable to travel solo.
Hmm.
So for instance, like if you wanted to plan a trip to Europe and your main goal was to go to museums and see artwork,
Hmm.
that's a really that can be a very rewarding solo experience,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Especially if you do tours and things like that. But if what you want to do is just to kind of have a reflective sort of trip, it
Hmm.
is actually really a
Mhm.
very enjoyable way to go as solo. I think
Hmm.
going and you know if going out to eat and having kind of social engagement is more
Hmm.
important to you, then obviously I think
Hmm.
going solo is going to be a bit rougher unless you're super outgoing and willing to cozy up at the bar to whomever is sitting
Right.
Well,
at
and
your
I
side.
think
Right.
the key that I'm picking up on, like, all of these interactions that you had on the
Mhm.
cruise
Hmm.
is that I feel like if you are wanting to do solo travel, and like you said, you could play it one or two ways.
Hmm.
I feel like you definitely made an effort to, have these conversations,
Yes.
strike up the conversations. But you could have also gone on the cruise and not talked to a single person if you wanted to.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So you could have played it, and I did not that one is right or one is wrong. Maybe someone wants to go on a cruise or they want to go on vacation. They just want to completely separate from everyone and just be silent,
Mhm.
and that's totally fine. But I
Mhm.
think the key factor here is that if you do want to solo travel, that doesn't mean that you have to sit in silence for 10
Exactly.
days.
Right.
Exactly.
You can
That's
have a
right.
conversation, you just have to make the effort.
That's right. You have got to be there again. You're advocating for yourself,
Yeah.
what kind of trip that you want. And that was a really good point, Chelsea. Because if you just want to be like chill and not talk to anybody, you can totally do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if you do want to be a little bit more outgoing, you will meet people. But there again, you have to be the
Yeah.
one that is
Yeah.
out there talking, interacting and
Exactly.
things like that.
And receptive to other people
Yeah.
taking
Exactly.
that chance talking to you too. Yeah.
Exactly,
Exactly.
because if you
Yes.
come across as closed off, then
Mhm.
less people are more likely to come up to you and
Right. And people will
strike a conversation.
they'll and you pick up on that
Yeah.
Right.
very easily
Right.
too. But going back to the question that you were asking, because there is some downtime. So we had a little bit more downtime on this cruise because due to weather, we had to skip not one, not two, but three
Mm.
ports.
Mm.
So that means more time on the vessel, on the ship. And this is and Windstar, I mean, it's a beautiful ship, but it's a small ship. So it's more between like a yacht and a cruise ship. So it seats or sleeps, I should say, anywhere depending on your ship, 144 people or 312. I mean, that's the max is
Mhm.
312.
Very small.
So
Yeah.
it's a smaller vessel. So their entertainment, so it's not like a big cruise ship where you have gambling, you have shopping, and
Mhm.
you have
Mhm.
the kids corner and all of that. But One of the beauties of Windstar is it is an adults only cruise
Mhm.
line.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not even
nice.
sure. I mean, I don't know what their policy is for children,
Mhm.
but I mean, there's no kids room or there's no camp or things like that,
Yeah.
and there were no children
Yeah.
on the cruise. I would say the average age would be like 60.
Mhm.
Although there was a cute couple on their honeymoon. I mean, there were
Oh,
younger
yeah.
people too, but the couple on their honeymoon didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
We were
They were on
joking
their
about that,
honeymoon.
but I wouldn't either. I mean, yes, you're on your honeymoon. You don't want to be chatting,
With
with
all these
50,
60-year-olds.
60, and 70-year-olds,
That's
no,
funny.
yeah, it was, and they were really cute. But I also saw too, so I was really struck with. So there were siblings traveling together.
Mhm.
I love that. There was a mother and daughter that was traveling, and
Mhm.
this widower that I met, he was traveling with his business partner because his
Mhm.
wife doesn't like to travel. So I mean, there was a, and then the female solo travelers that I met at dinner,
Mhm.
and there were probably more solo females on the ship that I just wasn't aware of,
Yeah.
um, but the downside is, so you do have to entertain yourself, like, on those days.
Mhm.
So either you're going to get a massage, or you're gonna play solitaire, or you're gonna read a book,
Yeah.
or you're just gonna, like, walk the ship. So,
Yeah.
I just made a point, like, on those days, I just really got my steps in. I would just, like, walk around the ship
Mhm.
or, walk around one of the decks or
Yeah.
but the ship is pretty good. I mean, they do have entertainment, like, they had, like, you could learn line dancing or salsa
Oh, yeah.
dancing. They had
Yeah.
different things like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't participate in that,
Yeah.
but, well, a lot of times it was, and I remember they
You
had,
didn't
like,
participate after your New Year's Eve dance
after
debut?
my dance with Andrew? No, I
Yeah.
did not. But I will have to tell you, because you all know that I mean, I'm up early in the morning, but I'm not actually, like, um, actively doing a lot of things early in the
Mhm.
morning. So a lot of these things were early in the morning. They were like
Oh,
at
yeah.
9 or
Yeah.
10, or I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's not
Too
going to
early.
happen in my world. I mean,
Yeah.
if I have to be up for like an excursion and meet them at 8, I mean, I will do that. But it's another thing to if they have line dancing at 9 a.m. It's
Mhm.
like,
I'm not a I don't work out when I go on vacation.
Me
mm,
neither.
Everyone they're like, "Oh, well, you teach Pure Barre and you do." I'm like,
yeah.
the last thing that I want to do
Mhm,
when I go on vacation is
mhm.
work out.
Yeah.
That's me
I'm
too.
on vacation.
Yeah.
Yep. I have that exact
I mean, you
same
walk,
thoughts.
like you said.
I will walk. I'll do that,
Yeah.
but, like, the ship had a little gym,
Mhm.
so and a lot of people were taking advantage of that, but I'm like, "Heck no." I mean,
Couldn't.
I do that at
No.
home,
Yeah.
so I just try to do all the things that I don't do at home, or and eat all the things that I don't eat at
Yeah.
home too.
Mhm.
That's how I view vacation, but definitely, I mean, I do like to walk, but it's also fun to walk on the ship because not only do you have this beautiful
Yeah.
vista,
Mhm.
uh, so either and it might be the sun is setting, or if you're up early, you can see the sunrise. I mean, it was just really beautiful. And then you're people watching too.
I was about to say
Which
Yeah.
is super fun.
my
Yeah.
favorite
But
thing
you're
about cruises is people
yeah.
watching because you normally, well, I don't know how Windstar is. I'm sure
Mhm.
it's like definitely a different caliber and different clientele.
Mhm.
But I've been on a few cruises. One of my best friends used to work on a cruise ship, and so she would get us on for like $10 a day, which
Uh-huh.
was insane.
Yeah.
But me and my mom and my best friend Noelle would go,
Uh-huh.
and her and her husband Jamie, she was a dancer and he was a singer, but they worked on Royal
Oh,
Caribbean,
yeah.
and
Oh,
which
wow.
is
Fun
actually
job.
it's a decent cruise line. I mean,
Yeah.
it's I would say a little bit higher caliber than some of the other ones,
Mhm.
but the people watching was always
Mhm.
Mhm.
so entertaining
Mhm.
because you just always encountered just the widest variety of people.
Yeah.
You really do. Well, even on the Windstar, which I think
Yeah.
has a specific demographic that they are targeting.
Mhm.
But it's people watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. So and then walking, you don't feel like, you're actually like plopped in a chair,
Staring at
actively
people.
staring at people. But you
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that loop around. And then also the deck that I was on, you could see the hot tub and you could see the
Oh,
hot tub
yeah.
action.
Yeah.
And the same people were in the hot tub all the time. It was like
Yeah.
it was pretty cute. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're back. That couple's back or that person's back. So that was pretty
Making the
cute.
most of it. Yeah.
hmm And
That
then the
is
pool
sweet.
too. Although I saw people in the hot tub, but I didn't really
I was
see
gonna say it was
people in the
probably
pool.
a little too cold for the pool, right?
Well, it is heated, and
Oh,
the weather in a couple of the ports was very nice, and it
okay.
was in the 70s. So, I mean, they actually had water sports activities, and they did at one of the ports, they did set that out
Mm.
Mm.
because it was warm enough. Nobody took advantage of it,
Yeah.
and that might have been different if it had been right in the middle of summer with
Yeah, I'm sure.
really hot temperatures.
Yeah.
But yes. So even on a cruise ship that's very safe and you can meet people if you want to, you will have some downtime,
Mhm.
all to yourself. So you have to be comfortable with that.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. I mean, I'm even when I was married, I always welcomed alone time. I just think
Mhm.
that that's very important. We actually have an episode that
Yeah.
we talk about that
Yeah.
alone time in a marriage. So if you're interested, you can scroll through our podcasts and catch up on that. I think that's very important. But so that was a cruise, and I was able to see. So we started off in Rome. We had to miss Sicily, which I was very disappointed about. That was one of the ports that we had to abandon. Then we went to Montenegro, which I think was my favorite
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
all of the cities. It was so quaint, and we actually stayed since we had to skip Sicily. We actually got into that port sooner, so we were there overnight, and then the next day.
Mm.
So I was able to explore the city on my own, and then the next day, then I went on a lovely tour. So I went to an olive farm,
Mhm.
and then learned about extra virgin olive oil,
Mhm.
which so if you want this little fact, you can tuck this away in your underneath your hat. It's so to be considered extra virgin olive oil, you have to pick the olives and produce it in the same day. So
Mm.
that's why you have extra virgin olive oil as opposed to just regular. So I thought that was interesting.
Interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
it is.
But it
Fun
was
fact.
that was probably one of my favorite tours because we got to see the farm, and this farm had been in the family for 4 centuries, which
Oh, wow.
is I just love that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so now 3 brothers and their mother run the farm.
Mm.
So their little donkeys out, and
Mhm.
they served us this lovely lunch. But that was one of my favorite tours.
Oh,
So.
nice.
So cruises are definitely an easy way to travel solo, and I would
Mhm.
highly recommend that. But I was talking to this gentleman on the way home, and I actually knew about this tour company. So it's called Rhodes Scholar,
Mhm.
but it's Roads. How clever is that?
Mhm.
Scholar. And so that is a tour company that really specializes in solo travel.
Mhm.
Mm.
So I think that would be something to entertain as well.
Yeah.
So the gentleman sitting next to me, and he was a former UGA professor.
Oh, wow.
So we had that in
Small
common.
world.
Small world. So he was just telling me about his trip, and it just reminded me, Kelly, because you're talking about art and visiting
Mhm.
museums. So that's what this tour was all about.
Okay.
Was really looking at
Mhm.
specific art pieces
Mhm.
and sculptures and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
but he had nothing but good things to say
Yeah.
about the tour and the accommodations that they had provided, and just how on time they were with everything. And but he was also talking about too, and I think this is just the pros and cons of tours, is that you're really beholden to their schedule,
Mm.
right? You can't just
You mean
go.
cruises
Well, cruises but
or the
tours
tours?
too,
Yeah.
because tours are, you have, and I just remember my
Mhm.
mom, when she went on tours. I mean, you're picked up at a certain time, and
Right.
then you have lunch here. I mean, they plan
That
everything.
is kind of the annoying
So that's some,
part about it.
so cruises and tours like this,
Mhm.
that's the downside. But there again, when you're solo traveler, I don't really mind having that schedule built in.
Well,
Mhm.
there's also something too about being an inexperienced traveler, even
Mhm.
if you're not going solo, but going with a tour or doing something
Mhm.
like that helps to take a lot of the guesswork out of
Yeah.
what keeps people from traveling because maybe they
Yes.
feel like it's overwhelming or something.
Mhm.
So then they just keep putting off
Yeah.
traveling. But if you
Mhm.
do a tour or something like that,
Mhm.
then it makes it a lot easier to sort of
For
Mhm.
sure.
ease yourself into it.
It does.
Mhm.
But if you're traveling like with your family or with your husbands, I much prefer just wandering around the city, and then you get to decide when you
Yeah.
get up, you get to decide what you're going to see that
Yeah.
day. You get to decide, when you're coming home.
Mhm.
You get to decide,
That's true.
yes, so many things.
That like
So,
so me and my mom went to Aruba last year,
mhm.
and somehow we got talked into doing this ATV tour.
Mhm.
If you ever go to Aruba and they talk you into that, just know that if you get any kind of motion sickness at all, or also just don't drink, like don't be hungover when you do
Yeah.
this, and just know you're gonna get bounced to hell and back. But it was in a group, and I guess Ryan, so my stepdad had done it before, but he did it kind of on their own. Like they went off on their own, which
Mhm.
was another option. But me and my mom were like, well, we don't know where to go. So we're obviously going to do this with the group.
Mm.
Mhm.
And oh my God, I thought I was going to die on that
Yeah.
tour.
That sort of thing does not sound fun to me
No.
at all. ATVs and
Mhm.
doing that
It was
sounds
like we got back and then they were like, oh, we're going to serve you lunch. And I looked at my mom and I go,
No.
what?
not into it.
We're
Like, lunch? Can we get it to go? I was like, first of all, I'm over all of these people. I'm like, I don't want to sit down with them at lunch.
Yeah.
Second of all, I feel so sick. I'm like, I need to lay down and close my
Mhm.
eyes.
Yes. I'm done. Dunzos with this tour.
Dunzo.
Well, it's funny that you said that because there was an ATV tour on the cruise. And so the people that chose to do that, it rained on them.
Oh,
So
see,
not
that's
only are
another
they doing it
tough.
in the rain, but they
Yeah.
came back just soaked and it was just like it
It
was
doesn't,
not.
Yeah.
I actually wish that it would have rained on us that day
So,
To cut it
because,
short, maybe.
well, no, just to get, it was so hot and like we were bouncing around.
oh.
Yeah.
And there was one, we basically made it to, they had like a little, like, pool. It wasn't a pool, but it was like, the ocean kind of created this, little mini pool. I
Mhm.
can't think of what it's not a cenote, but,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was kind of the last, and
Mm-hmm.
there were fish in there that I had never in my life seen before. I did not care. The moment we got there, I was like, dunk into it. It was so cold, and I'm like, "Let me just wait in here
Yeah.
before we have to go back on the ATV."
Yeah, because it's not just getting there, but it's getting
No,
back
you gotta get
too.
back.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had a
Oh.
I think I've traveled a lot by myself, but I've only been on one vacation alone. And it was kind of an accident that I ended up by myself, but it was a very formative holiday alone kind of experience. Like I
Mhm.
had never traveled all that much up until that point anyway. The person that I was with, so I had gone to Hawaii, and
Mhm.
the person that I was with got called back um, because of a family emergency. So I ended up having to spend
Mhm.
most of the vacation by myself.
Mhm.
Mm,
So, of course, there were plenty of days where I was content to just lay on the beach and do nothing,
Mhm.
which was great.
Right.
mhm,
But I did actually venture out, and I was so glad that I did because it really it built up my confidence just in terms of
Mhm.
going and seeking out adventure in a place that I was totally unfamiliar with.
Mhm.
mhm,
And I would just get the newspaper every morning. I'd get up really early and I'd go sit on the beach and I'd grab a newspaper and I would just look for like what was going on in the area
Mhm.
while I was there. And so I made a plan to like there was a Japanese festival that I went to, which was
mhm,
super fun. But I would just taxi from the hotel
Mhm.
mhm,
and go and just do all kinds of things that I probably would have never even thought to do. But like the Japanese festival was in the Japanese neighborhood, so it was
mhm,
like in like suburban Hawaii. Like it was just really kind of cool to. I never would have thought to do that
Mhm.
or experience that if I hadn't have been just by
mhm,
myself and looking for stuff to do. Because I think when you travel with somebody, there is some built-in stuff where you're like you both have common interests or you're both going to do the same, you have a plan to do certain things or whatever and you kind of go
mhm,
forward in your vacation just doing those things
Mhm.
that you both would want to do.
Mhm.
Um but this was yeah, it was a really it taught me a lot about traveling by myself
Uh-huh.
and also feeling confident to like go and seek things out that
I love
mhm,
that, and so that just brings me back. So we do have a foundational piece today,
Mhm.
and one of them is why it's important for women to travel alone, and it brings up some of these points that you just
Mhm.
brought up, and that was also one of the things that was very important to me. That's why I didn't take any. Usually, I travel with family. I mean, I'll
Mhm.
pick you've traveled
mhm,
with me several times, Kelly, Chelsea. We haven't done that yet, but maybe that's in our future. AJ's traveled with me. Christian's traveled with me. Actually, it's just you and Andrew that I haven't. Why is that?
We're the odd men out.
You're the odd man out. We'll have to take a look at that. But I love to travel with family, and I do honestly, at the end of the day, it's more fun to travel with someone.
Mhm.
I
Mhm,
personally think that than traveling solo. But it was very important to me to travel by myself. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, Kelly, because this article talks about that, why it's good for you. And I think it does give you confidence.
Yeah.
It gives you confidence that you can accomplish things on your own. You can figure out things on your
Mhm.
own. You can plan things how you want it. I mean, that's
Right.
actually what a lot of the female travelers I talked to on the cruise, that's what they liked, is because they can do exactly what they
What they
want.
want. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's why
No compromise.
they don't even have to, compromise with a friend or,
Mhm.
whoever it is,
Yeah.
because when you're all by yourself, you get to do exactly what you want to
Mhm.
do, which
Yeah.
is good.
Well, I think
So,
too, one of the confidence boosting things that I think is an important lesson that you can bring back home with you and use in your day-to-day life is
mhm,
just the problem solving aspect of travel, because nothing
exactly.
ever goes 100% as smoothly as you'd like it to. So there's always going to be, whether it's a big hiccup or a small hiccup, there's always going to be some moment during your trip where you're going to have to problem solve. And if you're relying on yourself to do that,
Mhm.
Mhm,
I think it's just such a huge win.
mhm.
And if you can, get through that, then you can get through a lot of things and you
Mhm.
can come home and kind of bring that
That's a
into
great
your
Yeah.
day-to-day
point.
life,
That's a
which
great point. And actually,
yeah.
at dinner with the female travelers, that's actually one of the points that one of the women,
Mhm.
I mean, she was talking about it, and she'd already run into a few snafus. She was in Ireland before she joined the
Mhm.
cruise, and she really was sharing with all of us that we just need to stay calm when you run into a problem, because most likely you will run into a snafu when you're traveling,
Mhm.
and then just figure out, how you're going to solve that.
Yeah.
But she brought that up several times, so
Yeah. Yeah.
because she had run into a couple of
Mhm.
problems. So, and actually a scary incident with at the bus, and AJ, I think she was in Marseille. He's not paying attention, but remember, Marseille's a little rough. It's a little rough. Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, she was in Marseille and she was waiting for a bus, which
Mhm.
I was like, kudos to you for getting
Taking
on
a bus. Yeah.
public transportation. Hello.
Mhm.
I thought that was very brave of her, but she realized that there was a group that was going to steal her phone, because
Oh.
they
Mm.
so there was
They,
a
like, spotted her out and
there was a
mhm.
female, because she was alone, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things you do have to be very thoughtful of. You have to be so aware of your surroundings, but
Yeah.
she was. So there was a young woman that came up and asked her what time, could she tell her what time it is, and so she did pull out her phone. And then as she's looking around, then she saw these two gentlemen sitting on some steps close
Mhm.
by,
Mhm.
and they were also watching what was going on, because the young woman wanted to see the phone for
Oh.
herself
Oh.
and what
Yeah.
time it was. And so she
Yeah.
realized what was going on. So
Yeah.
anyway, so she basically just ran away.
Yeah. You know what? That actually, like,
She just
it,
tucked her phone back in her pocket and just ran. I think she ran to the next bus stop.
yeah. That actually is a point in the column for wearing a good old fashioned
Watch.
wristwatch.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Like, so just don't pull your phone out at all.
That's
Just
right. Well, and one thing too, I do not really travel with jewelry,
yeah.
or if it's
Mm.
jewelry, it is costume jewelry. It's just jewelry that I
Yeah.
wouldn't bother me if I didn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
I'll only
So,
travel with my, ring, like, my engagement ring and wedding ring,
mhm,
typically, if I'm with, Andrew.
mhm,
I did this past weekend because, I was just going to New Orleans,
mhm,
and it was, like, a quick weekend trip
Yeah.
with friends,
mhm,
but, even when we went to Mexico for my bachelorette, I was like, "I'll just leave it."
I
mhm,
actually never even travel with my engagement ring because it's a one of a kind
mhm,
engagement ring. I could never replace it,
mhm.
Yeah.
if something were to happen to it. So I
Mhm.
never travel even with
Mhm.
my engagement. I
That's
just
Yeah.
wear
right.
my
Which
wedding band and
which
But
these are
there's,
great tips.
well, there's great options too, because actually one of the girls that I met in New Orleans, she had a ring on that wasn't, she had got it off of Amazon.
Mhm.
So they have
Uh-huh.
fake,
yeah,
They
that look
do.
like
rings
yeah.
that,
Yeah, cubic zirconias or
yeah, you can
whatever
still
it is
wear when
now.
you're traveling
Uh-huh.
to let people know, "Hey, I'm married," but, if
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
steal it, it's was like, what,
I know.
$30?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good tip. But going back to that article, um, one of the things that they were talking about was, and which we brought up, when
Mhm.
you travel by yourself, you have new confidence. And
Mhm.
you can do that at any age. I
Mhm.
mean, you could be 35, you could be 47, you could be 66. And
Yeah.
it really does boost your ego and your confidence
Mhm.
level, because you're doing things on your own
Mhm.
and figuring things out. And
Yeah.
then also, this article talked about, and you pointed this out, abilities are tested and
Mhm.
realized.
Mhm.
So, but then again, you might find new interests, which you just shared
Yeah.
when you were on this trip. You
Yeah.
figured out, okay, I want to go to the Japanese festival. So that was, maybe
Mhm.
it wasn't like technically a new interest, but it was a new experience
New
for you.
experience,
Hmm.
yeah. And I
So,
think, I mean, so there's all these opportunities for growth, whether it's
mhm,
problem solving and gaining confidence, whether it's, striking up a conversation when you're
mhm,
sitting at a bar and, they introduce you to something that you didn't know about, or
exactly.
any of it. Like it's all, and then not even to mention just the fact that you're in a new place, seeing new things.
Hmm.
So just being open to it,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's
Yes.
Mhm.
just the opportunity for growth and experience is just so
Hmm.
great. It's
And I love that. And that's why it was important for me to take this trip all by myself. And so
yeah.
I feel that I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about other people,
Mhm.
learned that you really do have to be like we were talking about Chelsea. I have to be much more outgoing when I'm in these situations. Otherwise, I won't meet that person,
Right.
or I won't have the opportunity to have dinner with somebody new. So that was
Mhm.
also. I mean, it came back, and actually, I have to say, so this is kind of funny, but many of you know, and my family knows. I mean, I've been dating, for the past few years, and that's one of the reasons why I actually like to go on dates is because it keeps my um just so many things sharp in my world. So
Mhm.
it keeps my intellect sharp. It keeps my openness sharp. There's just certain things that when you, and especially if you're dating somebody online, I mean, it's like a blind date.
Mhm.
So you're going in there and you have to be, you have to be like full of energy and curious and open and
Mhm.
just all these things, and so that's actually why I like to date,
Mhm.
is because it helps hone in on those skills, and so I was just reminded when I was traveling, I'm like, "I'm really glad that I've been out there dating because this has
Yeah.
really come in handy,"
Yeah.
because it's very second nature to me to ask people questions and
Mhm.
to be curious about them. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
anyway, that was so I thought that was kind of
It is.
interesting
For sure.
that I connected those dots together. But so are there any other thoughts that we have on solo travel before we head into the next segment, or any questions that you have?
No, I would just wrap it up with um don't let, for anybody out there who is solo,
Hmm.
don't let solo travel deter you from traveling.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And that's one of the things too that I was very pleased to see when I met these
Mhm.
female solo travelers, because that was their attitude.
Mhm.
And I was like, good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fabulous that they
Yeah.
have that attitude, and that there's a big wide world out there and they want to see it.
Yeah.
And so even if, and it's not even like and I'm putting this in air quotes, even if you have to by yourself, because I know that they have friends and family, so they
Mhm.
could certainly be traveling with one, or, one or the other, but they're choosing to explore the world on their own. And I was very impressed with that. So
Mhm.
it was very good to see.
I like it. Yeah.
And like I said, the female travelers outpace the men, which I find very interesting.
That
Mhm.
is interesting.
Very
I
interesting.
like
I
it.
do. But all right, ladies. Well, that wraps up this segment of Message from Mom. And we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with my favorite segment, which is New and Noteworthy. And we're back. Okay. So, for those of you who are not familiar, each Message from Mom, we share a new or noteworthy. It could be a product, it could be a movie, it could be a TV show. We try to run the gamut here. And so I just love that, because this is just, I mean, we're like girlfriends and we're just sharing. That's one of the things I love about women. We love to share our latest product, our latest, our
Mhm.
latest find. So I'm going to kick it off with you, Kelly. So what do you have this week for us?
Okay, well, I actually it's a TV show, which
What?
if you've
No way.
listened to any
No
of these, yeah,
way.
you know that usually I have TV shows. Um
We have to get your own podcast where you're talking about TV
this
shows.
is my this is so the new and noteworthies where I talk about TV and movies, which I always do. This
Yeah.
is my practice ground for launching my
There
own
you go.
TV
Yeah,
podcast.
TV
So I'm getting my
podcast.
practice
There
in.
you go.
Um, so I had seen this show advertised on Apple TV. It's called Pachinko.
Mhm.
I'd seen it advertised for a couple years at least. I finally, with season 2 had just come out, and I finally decided to give it a try. And I'm so glad that I did, because this show is just incredible. Like,
Really?
I mean, we really enjoyed Shogun.
Mhm.
Okay, if you
Loved it.
like Shogun, you will love Pachinko.
Okay.
It is like broad sweeping beautiful cinematography, like the characters, the acting, it's all so good. It's based on a novel by Min Jin Lee from 2017. It's a New York Times bestseller.
Mhm.
It's a saga about a Korean family starting in the early 1900s and going all the way up through at least where season 2 ends. We're kind of in the Korean War.
Oh, I love that. So it spans centuries.
Well,
No,
the century. I mean,
one century. Okay.
so far we're just in mid-century now. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
I didn't read the book, so I don't know how far the book goes in,
Okay.
to the future, but it's basically chronicling the this Korean immigrant family, and it's taking place over 2 time periods. So part of the story is told by the ancestors who are um some of them are still, around. So like the grandma who the story centers around in the early 1900s, she's still alive in the 1989
Mhm.
part of the show. So she's with her grandson in that. So you do see her as a young woman, a middle-aged woman, and then an old woman.
Okay.
So she spans both storylines, but then you see her different family come in and out of it. It's so
Okay.
I can't even do it justice with my description. So this is it's just so
So does
good.
this have subtitles or is it all in
It's
English?
it's subtitled.
It is subtitled.
So
Okay.
it's in Japanese, Korean, and English.
Okay.
So, and the way that they handle this is really smart, actually. So they have, and they explain this when you turn on the show. There's a title card that kind of explains how the subtitles work. But the Korean subtitles are subtitled in yellow, the
Mhm.
Japanese are in blue, and the English are in like a kind of light gray white.
Oh, that is very
So
clever.
you can tell, like, and what's really clever about it is that because these Korean immigrants have been forced to learn Japanese because they were occupied by Japan,
Mhm.
when they moved to Japan, seeing in the subtitles how the characters are switching, even in one
Languages.
sentence.
Uh-huh.
Half the
Yeah.
sentence will be in Korean and
Yeah.
then words will pop up in Japanese. And you can tell
Mhm.
because they separate them all out in the subtitles. It's
Mhm.
very clever.
That's cool. And
Yeah.
that's very common with, I mean, Mac's family was multilingual,
Hmm.
and they would start off the conversation in English, then they would switch to German, then they would be in Persian, and I would be
Yeah.
like, like a ping pong ball. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is going on here? But that's very common with
Yeah,
these multilingual
for sure.
families.
For
And
sure.
they sat down and shared with me one time that sometimes they don't have the right word in one language.
Hmm.
It's
Mm.
better in another language, and that's
Right.
why they switch out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I thought that was also very
Yeah,
fascinating
it
too. But
is. It
so
is.
so Pachinko.
Pachinko, really.
Okay.
Oh, and I will say too, just really quickly, that the
Mhm.
the opening title credits for this show are some of the best I've ever seen.
Ooh, nice. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's on my list because winter is coming. I mean, the evenings are getting darker sooner, and pretty soon it'll be daylight savings time, and then it'll be dark at 5.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
lots of TV time. So thanks, Kelly.
Perfect.
Okay, Chelsea, what do you have this week for new or noteworthy?
I have a TV show as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Disclaimer, and it's on Apple TV.
Mm-hmm.
The first episode date actually just came out on October 11th of this year. So it just came out. But I think I'm on maybe episode 4 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually don't
They've
know.
released 4.
Okay.
And they have 7 because
I was like,
I had to Google it. I'm like, how many episodes are there? It's fantastic.
it's good. Yeah. So
It's
it's
very good.
basically the the story premise of it is a novel appears at the bedside of a journalist who her career has been built on revealing basically transgressions, and she soon realizes after she reads the novel that she is the key character in a long, you know, buried story that
Mhm.
eventually like exposes her darkest secret,
Mhm.
which we obviously don't know yet.
Right.
So I might be on episode 3 actually, because there might be
Mhm.
one more that I but anyways, I just started it,
Mhm.
and, it's pretty good. It's got Kate Blanchett in it,
Mhm.
so,
And she's amazing.
yeah.
I
The
love her.
whole cast of characters is very well cast. So Kevin Kline
Mhm.
is in it, and so he's probably portraying someone that's older than he is. I mean, it seemed like this
don't know, we haven't seen
Weird.
much of Kevin Kline for so long that
I
when I saw
know,
him on
it's
screen again, I'm
true.
like, "Gosh, where have you been?" Because I
I
really
know,
like
he's
that
so
guy.
good.
But yeah, he's very gray
Yes, he's
now.
very great. Well, I was just thinking that the character in the TV show was maybe like 80. I don't know why I
Yeah.
got that idea, but I just did. Um,
But
Mhm.
it's good. I mean, I feel like you definitely I started it with Andrew and he was
mhm,
not paying attention at all in the first
mhm.
episode, which you have to pay
You
attention
have to.
in the first episode because it goes back and forth
Yes.
between a lot of different characters and even time frames.
Mhm.
And then we got to the
A
second
lot of
episode and he
flashbacks.
was like, "I'm not into this." It's like, well, because you don't know what's going
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Mhm.
So definitely if you watch it, pay
Like,
attention. You
bye-bye.
can't be on your phone
That's
scrolling.
very true. That's very true because actually when I started it, I'm trying to think, it was like on a Sunday afternoon. And I did get distracted, so I had missed that she was a journalist. So
Yeah.
I was a little lost there, so I had to go back. I'm
Back
like, "Okay,
yeah.
we're just gonna start this over. We're gonna
Yeah.
reboot and start it over." But
Yeah.
so anyway, so Kevin Kline, I mean, great cast. So Kevin Kline and Kate Blanchett, who's amazing, and I mean, I love her in everything. She's such a talented actress.
Mhm.
But surprisingly, Sacha Baron Cohen
Yeah.
plays her husband, and he is doing an excellent job. And I've only seen him in all of his goofball roles.
Mhm.
I've never seen him in anything dramatic. So
Mhm.
I was very impressed
Yeah.
uh, his performance. So great cast,
Mhm.
very good story. I think it's told very well. The pacing is very good. So yes, and as I said, I've already looked. There's 4 episodes released. There's seven
Yeah.
in all, and it is good. So good,
It's
good
very
pick,
good.
good
Yeah.
pick. Okay, so since we are talking about travel, and I just had 2 long haul flights, so and I really noticed a lot of people. Of course, you have the entertainment that the um, airline provides you, but maybe you don't like those shows. Maybe you don't like those TV shows. Maybe you don't want to watch those movies. So I did see a lot of people streaming their own
Oh,
content.
really? Hmm.
And so I saw this little hold on. So it's called a universal airplane phone holder. So you can I mean a lot of people had like their iPads and they
Mhm.
even streamed on their computers, but that's a little bit more cumbersome
Mhm.
because I did have my computer out on part of the flight, but then you have to get in and out, then you have
Yeah.
to, you have to put
Mhm.
your tray table. I mean, so I thought it was just streaming on your phone is really kind of a genius idea. So this is a universal plain phone holder. It's under $15 and it lets you attach your phone to the back of the airplane seat in front of you.
Oh.
So you can stream whatever you want to because I mean now they make it so easy to
Mhm.
get Wi-Fi and
Right.
things like that. Although I still struggle getting
I
Wi-Fi.
always
I don't
I
know what I'm
never
doing
can get
wrong.
it.
Yeah.
But
I can never get it.
I always have to ask somebody for help. I'm like, I think I'm doing it right, but perhaps
Perhaps not.
not perhaps, but obviously I'm not because I'm not on. Yeah. So anyway, so that's my
Okay.
little
Good recommendation.
yeah, it really is. It's on Amazon. So and we'll have those links down below too. Okay, ladies. Well, we have concluded another episode from Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law.